Setbacks and difficulties are a very real part of our lives. How you will deal with them will determine the destiny of your life. We, of course, have our own challenges, and then there are the challenges of those around us, family, friends, co-workers, colleagues. Please join me in this fourth and final part of a new course, the Hasidic approach to dealing with loss and failure. In this part 4, how to help others deal with failure. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson here, and I welcome you to the fourth and final part of this new course, the Chassidic approach to dealing with loss and failure. In this fourth part, we will address how to help others deal with failure. I think it's best to begin with an important premise, that we're here not just to take care of ourselves, but also to help others. It's important to state because often in this survival of the fittest, dog eats dog world, for many that may not be a given. They tell the joke, 2 guys go camping, middle of the night, one guy wakes up and he tells his friend, "Hey, I hear a bear scurrying out there. We got to get out of here." And while he's saying it, he's tying the shoelaces of his sneakers. And his friend, rubbing his eyes, says, "Why are you tying your shoelaces? You think you can outrun the bear?" He says, "No, all I have to do is outrun you." Sadly, this is somewhat of a testimony to the way some people have attitudes to life and taking care of themselves before everyone else. But the truth is, as we shall discuss, a big part of our own welfare is how we treat others. Not just out of compassion and as the right thing to do and the civil thing to do, but actually it's appreciating that we're not alone in this world and that we're in it together with everyone else and we all complement each other. So in the first 3 parts of this course, we spoke about the psychological approach to loss and failure. We spoke about the cosmic and the mystical and spiritual roots, and how not to be your own worst enemy in part 3. Now we will talk about how to help others deal with failure. So it's inevitable that you will have a friend, a family member, a co-worker, a colleague, and maybe even a stranger will come your way that will be experiencing some type of setback, some loss, some failure, loss of a job, a divorce, some other type of unfortunate incident. It could even be something tragic. You can, of course, choose to ignore it. It's not my problem. But no, we have an obligation to help each other. Because we are, at the end of the day, we are all part of one large organism. Now, if someone needs more convincing, I would then suggest we need to have another course just for that. So I'm going to assume that we all agree on that premise. So the question now is how, not whether, how to help another when they're going through a difficult moment. Or perhaps more than just a moment. So we will begin here not with tools of what to do, because this isn't just about technical. If like someone has a plumbing leak or an electrical problem, you bring an electrician, a plumber, and they fix the mechanics. Here there's much more than mechanics involved when a person is dealing with challenges. There's the emotional component. There's the demoralization involved. There's the sadness. And the response to that is not a mechanical fix. Oh, we'll put on a Band-Aid. We'll fix this leak. No, we'll get rid of the pain. It's about addressing that emotional concern, which is the first and foremost most important thing, and that is compassion, care. Don't underestimate the power of caring for another and just showing care and compassion, how much that can help. You may say, well, what does that solve? We have a problem we have to deal with. It gives a person the strength to solve any problem, to know that someone cares. Of course, this includes the opposite of not doing the opposite, which is judgment, condescension, or any other form of critique and invalidation of a person. That's the last thing you do when someone is in need. Show care and compassion. You're just sensitive. Even if you don't agree, frankly, with the other person's attitude or feeling of demoralization or of despair or loss or hopelessness, the first thing they need to know you're in it with them. This doesn't mean you're suffering like they are, but you care and you're ready to empathize, which means getting yourself out of the way. So in a way, it's counterintuitive. You think, I'm going to help someone, I'll bring myself all the way into the picture. Now, you're not here to save, you're here to care, you're here to help someone help themselves. I don't know who coined the expression, but I love the expression, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That care and compassion is critical. Now, when we're in need, if someone gave that to us, that would also be extremely nourishing. It's literally like nourishment. So let me talk a little more about that because it's so often overlooked, the importance of that. The first thing is it takes you out of that dog eats dog mindset. All I have to do is outrun you mindset. And that is that you are allowing your ego, your interest to be put aside for another person. That goes a long way. A person may not even articulate it, but they notice that you are ready to put aside your own interests to be there for them. And that could just be a listening ear, sympathetic ear, and maybe advice as well. We'll get to that. But it begins with that type of empathy. It lifts the experience out of ego and out of immediate concerns and out of self-interest. And that already is a healer. Because it's not the failure or the loss per se that is always the hardest part of it. It's how we deal with it. That if you feel alone, you feel criticized, or you feel like a failure, that can make that's worse than the actual failure itself. By somebody going out of their way and getting their ego aside and showing compassion and care and love, that has counterbalanced that initial feeling that I am not worth it. You are worth it. And that's you as a friend have to show. So in truth, this is really more of a talk, not just how to help another dealing with failure, it's how to help another, period. This is how we help each other. By showing that form of compassion, that form of love. Human beings thrive on love because love is our natural state. Just like a fish in water, love is our very sustenance. It's about connection, attachment. That's what love is about. When a child is in its mother's womb for 9 months, what do you think it's getting? Love. The mere fact that it's submerged in the embryonic fluids of a mother, that's nurturing, that's nourishing, that's feeding, that's basically sustaining the child in every possible way, the child gets the message in its superconscious, in its unconscious, in its subconscious, that for 9 months I was cared for. For 9 months, another human being created space for me, or allowed space for me. That's a tremendous vote of confidence and validation, deeper than any compliment you will ever get. Because it's not just words, it's actions. And when parents show nurturing when the child is born, here's your room, here's your bed, here's your crib, here are your clothes, we feed you. The constant touch, the cuddling, the cradling, the embracing, the nursing, all of it are indicators. And more than indicators, all of it are actual ingredients, all of it are nourishment, food for the soul of the child. And throughout our lives, the love we will receive is all about that compassion, that care of another for you. So when it comes to helping another who's dealing with a difficult situation, a failure, a loss, remember above all, care, concern, compassion. That alone is a healing agent. Now that we've dealt with that critical first step, once you have that, which of course it engenders and also cultivates trust, because when someone sees that they're cared for, they'll be more responsive. If they just see someone coming in like a battering ram and just like a bull in a china shop, I'm going to just find solutions and let's solve it and so on, there's going to be less trust. So when you have that trust, now comes the next step of how as an objective party, that's you, can you help the subjective party who's in loss and failure? So the first thing is to listen. Don't come in with advice. Don't come in with any superlatives and platitudes and all kinds of statements. You're coming to listen, which is, of course, an extension of that care. You listen. Where's that person at? A person who's hurting, who's lost something, has failed, is hurting. Now, they may be hurting one day more than another, so it's important to listen. A day when the person's in real need, for whatever reason, feels completely lost, feels like I'm a failure, feels that life is never going to be the same way again, the key thing is to show, no, I'm here. Please talk to me. I'm your support. We will get through this. You'll get stronger. You have a lot going for you. The constant vote of confidence. If it's a day where a person feels a little more open, and they say, what do you think we should do or I should do? So that may be the time to begin to suggest something. But it's very important to be careful when to suggest. I have learned from my life experience that when people come for advice, they may want advice, and you may even have advice to give. It's not always healthy and wise to give it immediately, because you need the person to be able to internalize it, integrate it. As I said, you want to help them help themselves. You don't want them coming running back to you every time for a fix. You want to help empower them. And that requires listening and then responding accordingly. So it all depends case by case. Each person is different. Your role is not to be the savior. Your role is also not to be the know-it-all. You don't have to have an answer for everything. Your role is to be that compassionate, empathetic friend of support and provide objectivity. Something that a person who's in the midst of a challenge sometimes can lose to some extent because of their feelings that bias them, their negative feelings that can also demoralize and cause them to think they don't have as much strength as they do have. So your goal is the objectivity. And the third goal, compassion, objectivity, and the third goal is to provide options that the person may not see, which is called empowerment. Empowerment. You're empowering the person with different suggestions. And the key is to find the suggestions that work for that person. Not everything works not everything works the same way for the same person. Everyone needs, one size does not fit all. And we'll talk about that also in a moment. Let me just elaborate a bit more about this empowerment. It's the tendency and the temptation, especially of a novice, is to say, here's the solution. And it may be the right solution. What you want is the person to be able to apply and internalize that solution and be able to do something with it, even when you're not there. So the objectivity plus suggestions is a form of testing and seeing what will work. And different things work for different people. And here let's a little evaluate a bit more, probe and dissect a bit more the stages. When a person experiences failure, as I said, there's the emotional side. Then there's the time where you can start discussing options. And the options, the key thing is to remember, as I said, is empowering the individual. So therefore, it's a good way, one good approach is not to say, do this, don't do that. Let's explore options. Let's explore, maybe do it this way. You lost a job. You have certain talents. Maybe you need to find a different type of job. Who says you need exactly what was there in the past? The tendency is people just want to repeat the past and they may repeat their failure. Let's explore options. You're doing something here besides the vote of confidence in point number 1 of empathy and compassion. Besides objectivity, you're also helping open up a person to many new approaches. Fresh air, it's called. Very often, the failures and losses of our lives become our identity. And what you want is to open up a new possibility. I recall advising someone in a career issue. So they were fired in a very ugly way. It was very devastating. But finally, that person came to discover that they never really appreciated what I'm really good at and found a different job, completely different type of job. But it took time because you're still in that mindset. You say, okay, what did I do wrong? I'll do it better this time. And sometimes, no, that was just a way of revealing to you, to that person, that no, maybe you should explore something else. And they're doing very well now. So it's also an opportunity, is what you're teaching a person, that whatever has happened is an opportunity to grow from it. Like we discussed in the previous parts of this new course. What did we discuss? We discussed the idea of the understanding that every setback is a transition to greater growth. The idea of the tzimtzum, concealment, a type of pulling back in order to expose a deeper truth, a crack that opens up a higher reality. That is also what we're helping another person come to discover. Now, they may not see it because when you're in the crack and you're falling through it, and especially if you're demoralized and emotionally weak, you don't see it. That's the role of the friend. That's how you help. So everything we discussed in the first 3 parts of this course is, of course, relevant to this 4th part. I'm not going to repeat all that because that was discussed. But now you're serving the role, instead of being there in the receiving end, you're in the giving end of offering these different suggestions and ideas. So this leads me to one of the suggestions, is the idea of immersing someone in a spiritual spa, SPA, as in study, prayer, action, cognitive and emotional and behavioral conditioning, is to help your friend or whoever is in need to immerse themselves. So we talked about compassion, to sum up. We talked about objectivity, and we talked about empowerment and options. And finally, what we're talking about now is actually giving suggestions. Suggestions, not how to solve your problem, but how to strengthen yourself. Because at the end of the day, the single most important thing you want to teach, in addition to the compassion and the care we spoke about and the empathy, is that this is not about you. Your failure and you are 2 separate things. It happened to you. And it could either be a catalyst of growth, or it can be something that will just break you or make you embitter you. It's not you. And how do we do that? And how do we reinforce that? Is by strengthening yourself as a friend. And here I am speaking to someone who, let's say, needs help in a time of need, a time of loss or failure. I'll say, as a friend, I'd like to suggest something. Here's a book to read. Here's a prayer to say or recite. Here's a good deed that may come your way. And best as you find it yourself, but you can suggest. What you're doing is giving the person a lifeline, 3 lifelines actually. The SPA of SPA. Study, getting their mind away from the negative and from the loss, and focusing on something that maybe is very empowering spiritually. Study about your soul, study about yourself. Prayer is an emotional exercise where you're emoting. What do you really love? What do you really care about? Express it. And action, finally, action consumes your everyday behavior. Volunteer for a good cause. Help out someone who's in need. Send out a message online or on social media or whatever to another person, kind words. These things are all positive forces that are empowering, reinforcing, and what they're doing is strengthening the very spirit. Remember, when a person, God forbid, is in the hospital or is ill, in addition to medication and surgery if necessary, God forbid, or anything else, you also have to strengthen the strong parts, the regular parts of the body. Exercise, good hygiene. You don't just focus on, okay, let's fix the problem. You take the rest of the person, you want to strengthen them here too. Failure and loss is not the definition of who you are. It's one thing that happened to you. It may be strong, it may be devastating even. But there's a whole part of you. If a person gets snubbed in their toe, that doesn't mean their arms and legs and the rest of the body are snubbed. It may be painful. I said snubbed, I should have said stubbed. Same thing when a person is snubbed. And the same thing with any type of setback. It doesn't define you. So part of the friend that's helping another who is in need of help in the time when they're suffering a loss or failure is to also help them strengthen the other parts of who you are. You know, the person likes, let's say, plays music. Encourage them. Take out a violin, go to a piano, a guitar, whatever instrument, play. They like to sing, they like to dance, they like to listen to music. Listen with them. What you're doing here is not distracting them alone from the negative. You're actually strengthening parts of them, and when the person is stronger, their fight is stronger, their will is stronger. And in addition, it gives them pleasure and delight, which in turn is also empowering. So you see from all this, my friends, there's so many things we can do for each other when another is in a type of painful or situation where they're suffering or experiencing a loss or failure. There's much we can do. And the interesting thing is when you do it, it's not just for the other. There's an expression, both eyes get radiated, get illuminated. To counter it with the story that I mentioned before about all I have to do is outrun you, there's another story they tell. Two people traveling in the woods, it was a very cold night, they get lost. One of them is a heavier set man, the other one is more frail. The frost is setting in, it's getting colder and colder, bitter cold. Their resources are gone. They don't know what will be. Well, the frailer person who doesn't have so much blubber, so much thick skin, is slowly passing out to the point that he faints in the snow, in the ice. His friend, instead of abandoning him and outrunning him, goes down on his arms and legs and begins to massage his muscles, his chest, all of his body, trying to keep him warm. He's really exerting himself. And what do you know? He did keep him alive. Meanwhile, some passers-by came by and they saved them both. They came to a local inn, fireplace, they were warming up. Yes, they were quite cold, but they both survived and lived. After the frail man came to, and they were fed and nourished, and he came over to the other person and says, I have to thank you. You saved my life. Had you abandoned me, had you not come down in your arms and legs and massaged me, I would have passed out, I would have died there in the cold. Frostbitten. And the friend says, no, you don't understand. I have to thank you. He says, why do you have to thank me? He said, because had I not exerted myself, had I not worked hard, I too would have fainted and passed out. So dear friends, when we help each other, we're helping ourselves. I'm not saying that's why you should do it. But the fact of the matter is when you exert yourself, and even without total exertion, when you put yourself out there and allow yourself to help another who's for that moment in need, with the different suggestions we spoke about and the different ideas, you yourself get warmed up and inspired. That too comes back to you. Fascinating statement in the Talmud. Hamispal ba'at chaverei hu nenot chila. Someone who prays for his friend, for another, who's in need of something, hu nenot chila will be responded to first. He will get his needs answered even before the other person. And it's usually understood as being similar needs. What does it mean? Why would that be the case? Because there's some invisible connection between all of us. The quantum mechanics or the quantum physicists put it this way. Some call it string theory, others have different theories. There's an invisible connection between every subatomic particle in existence, and definitely between human beings. So when we help someone else, we're actually helping the same very organism we're made of. And that's what the Talmud is saying, that when you pray for another, you get answered first. Why first? Why not equal time? It could be because you're aware. The prayer itself, you're aware of it. So it responds to you, and of course will respond also to the other. It also strengthens that organism. It's like massaging one part of your arm, so the other parts of the body also get warmer, because it's really all one part of one reality. And finally, going back to the initial point of transcending your ego and self-interest. By doing that, you bring healing to everything. Ego, a tamed ego, a healthy ego, a harnessed ego is one thing. But ego on its left on its own, without any control and discipline and seasoning, self-interest is exactly like an infection. It's about me, me, me. Where do infections fester? When things are closed up. An infection. You need fresh air. You need to open it up. So when we open ourselves up to help another, we're bringing healthy, fresh air into our system and into the entire system of existence. So in a strange and interesting way, by helping another in a time of loss or failure, we're actually helping ourselves. It could be the help is coming immediately. It may be in time. I'm not saying it as an incentive. It's just trying to understand the picture. And it's really a beautiful picture in that sense. So above all, we have to remember that every setback and every loss and every failure and every difficulty should never be seen in a vacuum. It's all part of a larger narrative. And that larger narrative is that everything is a journey. And this setback can lead you to great growth if you allow it to. Is it painful? Of course it's painful, especially if it's tragic. If there's a loss or a death involved, then of course it's not. I'm not suggesting that's what we want. But we're talking about its effect on you long term. And the long-term effects is that it can be redeemed and honored even to become a catalyst that catapults you like a springboard to far, far greater heights. So in this whole, we'll call it symbiosis process, there's the things we need to know as we deal with loss and failure. And there are things we need to know as we help others. And they all feed each other. They all spill over into each other. As we help others, it helps us. And when we help us, by effect, it's also helping others. And there others are helping us as well. What we're seeking and looking for is the synergy of all these forces coming together and creating something so much more beautiful, something so powerful, that we are all, in a sense, all parts of one larger organism, one larger symphony. And as such, each of us contributes our special song, our special music. And when it's combined with others, it joins it together in this cosmic, glorious symphony that resonates and reverberates from one corner of the planet to the other. Love, the connection that connects us all. So no matter what you go through, no matter what each one of us will go through, keep always in mind that love is stronger than disconnection. Connection is stronger than dissonance. And that connection is what allows us to heal and grow. The connections we make within ourselves as we see the setback as a stepping stone toward growth. And the same is as we help each other. And that, my friends, is, I hope I did justice to the Hasidic approach to dealing with loss and failure. And it's called the Chassidic approach because it's fundamentally based on the teachings and principles of Hasidic thought, which is mystical teachings for our time, making it relevant, making it passionate, making it come alive, excited, and being applied to every aspect of our life, which of course we've been addressing the issue of loss and failure. But the same is with every other challenge and every other issue in life. The Hasidic approach has much to say. One of my commitments to life, in my life, is to, and the Meaningful Life Center, is to develop a full and broad methodologies and methodologies based on Hasidic thought, a new psychology for the future that will integrate the best that's out there in understanding the very nature of what makes us tick, our psyche, the DNA of our souls. In many ways, mapping the spiritual genome, understanding the different parts of who we are, both on a practical level, on a psychological level, on an emotional level, and on a spiritual level. And as we understand the parts of our beings, we can also learn what to nourish, what to avoid, and to build healthier human beings. In dealing with every challenge, whether it's loss or failure or depression or other challenges that exist out there, whether it's connected to our personal lives, our professional lives, our social lives, issues around sexuality and intimacy, issues between parents and children. This is what the Meaningful Life Center's mission is committed to, is to provide those modalities, approaches, formulas, algorithms that can help address any given issue, obviously always customized to each person's particular needs. So this course is one of many, hopefully, that will come. If there's any ideas that you may have or any needs you may have, please share it with us and we'll explore it to create more such empowering courses, Hasidic approach to dealing with whatever challenge or issue we're facing in our lives. And above all, may the spiritual energy generated by all of this actually be preventive medicine and preemptive medicine to prevent and preempt so many of the maladies and so many of the issues that may come up. But at the same time, we also have to address them as they do come up. I thank you for being part of this. It's been an honor. And please be in touch. Questions, comments, absolutely share with others. We're all part of this bigger picture of dealing with every challenge. This has been a 4-part course, the Hasidic approach to dealing with loss and failure. Thank you very much. God bless you.